With the rise of AI, how do you feel like the consulting job market is right now and in the future?
Will AI kill consulting? Are we all doomed? Will AI take our jobs?
For software engineers, it's like LeetCode. For consultants, it's like certain coffee chats, right?
I would feel like nauseous, butterflies. I really like them now.
Can anybody do it? Can anybody get into consulting? Or do you have to have a very specific background to get into a field like that?
Actually, you don't need a business background to go into management consulting. Computer science and tech background's awesome. We love that.
So you were managing a team at 25. So tell me the story of how that even happened.
I think that people tend to make the mistake of spending way too much time on situation and task and not enough on action, like how you're going to stand out, right? It sounds simple, but I think the mindset to have is,
Kelly, you made it into rooms everyone else is fighting to get into, Goldman Sachs, BCG with million-dollar clients, and then you quit. So tell me the story of how most people spend their entire life trying to get to that point, but you walked away.
yeah, absolutely. Is it helpful for me to start from the very beginning of my younger years? Is there like a particular moment in my career you'd like me to start from?
No, let's start from the beginning. So like, how did you get into consulting, how you got those roles, and then where you ended up?
Okay, perfect. So in terms of consulting, I entered consulting right from undergrad, actually. And then prior to that, I interned at Goldman Sachs. So the sequence was I started off in university in Canada. I'm Canadian. I studied business in university. I've always had an interest for business since high school when I did some business competitions in an organization called DECA. So I chose to study business at Western University, Ivy Business School. In my third year summer, I thought that I would be interested in, one, working in the USA, two, potentially interested in finance because I took a lot of econ courses and sales and trading was very econ focused, right? Whereas banking was more so dissecting the financial statements and the hours and the culture was so different. So I recruited in my third year very hard for sales and trading at Goldman Sachs and landed the offer, went to work there in the US for the summer. But I realized that sales and trading wasn't for me. I felt like my skills, my interests, where I wanted to be in the future, everything was much more aligned with management consulting. I wanted to look into business strategy, business operations, and management consulting would be such a great dynamic place for that, get exposure to tons of projects and industries, be very hands-on. And I didn't really expect actually to go into management consulting full time. I thought, well, maybe I take my return offer in sales and trading, work in this space for another year or two, right? Like it's not like I hated it. But that summer, while I was interning in sales and trading, I spoke with someone from BCG Chicago who connected me to someone from BCG Toronto. And we had a chat. See, this is where the power of networking and presenting yourself well in these coffee chats come in, because we had a chat and I imagine it went well because then later on they reached back out to say, hey, Kelly, we're doing accelerated applications and running these interviews because we know sometimes people have to accept their full-time offers before the start of the next school year. Would you want to apply? And of course I did. So I applied for BCG that summer. Before I even entered my fourth year university, I applied during my internship while I was still at Goldman Sachs. And I received the offer to interview. I interviewed with BCG and only BCG, landed the offer for full-time, thankfully. And so I switched to consulting for full-time.
Amazing. Thanks for that background. One question I have here is, to someone who's outside this world, what is consulting? What is management consulting? And then where does BCG fit into that picture?
Yeah, absolutely. So consulting, it's so broad, right? Like it makes sense why people don't truly understand it. You can be doing consulting for all kinds of industries. It's not just management consulting. But specifically management consulting is, think of it like you are a doctor for businesses, very, very large businesses. I think it depends too. Like maybe sometimes management consulting firms will work with smaller clients, but for us at BCG, McKinsey, Bain, aka the MBB firms, these are the top 3 global firms for consulting. We would work with primarily Fortune 500 clients, governments, and so on. And what we do again, like I said, think of the analogy like doctors for businesses. If they have a problem, they'll come to us. We'll do things like diagnose the problem and help them think of solutions. Maybe the problems look like, hey, why are our costs rising so much in the past few years? How can we reduce our costs? We want to enter this new market. How do we do that? We are looking to acquire a company. We need to learn more about the market and that a business generally, can you tell us more? Maybe it's a large-scale digital transformation, like now especially much more prevalent. We want to build a new customer application. It's going to be digitized. How is that going to impact the rest of our business? And how do we need to change our business to bring that digitization to life?
So what kinds of companies do you work with? You mentioned larger scale ones. Could you actually name some kind of general names of companies you would work with? What are they like? What kind of needs do they have?
Of course. So at BCG, because BCG, McKinsey, Bain were some of the largest management consulting companies, we work with really like a ton of businesses that you can think of, right? Costco, like I'm also not saying this as these are BCG clients. I'm just saying these are like general clients of management consulting firms, just to be protective and confidential. But yeah, like everything, like Louis Vuitton, Chanel, and luxury fashion, all the airlines, right? Like American Airlines, Delta, supermarkets, grocery stores, pharmacies, big pharma companies, Pfizer, government bodies. So all sorts, private equity companies too, right? Like Carlyle, Onyx, so on.
Nice. So talking about management consulting in general, can anybody do it? Can anybody get into consulting? Or do you have to have a very specific background to get into a field like that?
So one thing that I didn't realize when I was recruiting is actually you don't need a business background to go into management consulting. At MBB firms. So again, like speaking from that MBB, like the Bain McKinsey, BCG experience, we actually look into all sorts of backgrounds, right? Like PhDs, people who studied any subject, engineering, science, the humanities, people who attended their MBA programs, even people who are just working full time, like in various sectors. You can come in as a lawyer. I've seen doctors come in directly from practicing medicine, and you can have tons of industry, corporate experience, startup experience. It's actually all welcome and accepted.
If someone is a computer science major or in tech, how does someone like that know they're right for consulting?
Good question. And so it's computer science and tech backgrounds, awesome. We love that, especially again now, digitization, AI, it's becoming such a big prevalent space, and so many of our projects are related to that. How would they know if they're a good fit for consulting? I think that if they like thinking about how businesses work, right? It's not like coding, you're writing code, everything's very in the weeds. We do a lot of in the weeds work like analysis, but we also think a lot big picture strategy, like markets. How does this industry work? How will this business gain differentiated advantage? Who are their customers, competitors? So if you like business strategy and also learning about how the ins and outs of the business operations and working with a lot of people, engaging with stakeholder management, developing a ton of soft skills, I would say consulting could be very interesting. Then I think another angle is to think about what do you want to do maybe 5, 10 years into the future? Can consulting set you up very well for it? The truth is many people who go into consulting don't stay there for even like 2 or 4 more years. For me to have to stay there for 6 is already a long time. So most of us use it as a boot camp and like a training ground to develop skills and build the network and connections to go somewhere else afterwards. So if you are someone in tech and you're thinking, oh, well, maybe I don't want to continue my current trajectory. Maybe I'm interested in pivoting to something totally different. Maybe I want to become like a C-suite leader, like a company executive. Maybe I want to, go into private equity or something else. That consulting can set set you up very well for, I think that's a very good reason to go in as well.
With the rise of AI, how do you feel like the consulting job market is right now and in the future?
That's also a really great question that many people have had very various opinions on, right? Like, oh, will AI kill consulting? Yeah, are we all doomed? Will AI take our jobs? I think that in terms of demand for consultants, it's hard to say for my perspective. Maybe someone on the inside would have a bit more detail because the way I see it is there is one, a slowdown in job market hiring overall generally. And at the same time, there is also like this growth in AI and AI tools enhancing productivity. And I think that it's a bit too early to say, well, consulting firms are already slowing down hiring because they think we don't need as many people since AI is going to make us all more productive. I think it's a bit early for that right now since yes, AI can make a few things easier, like maybe they make this deck making or the analysis a bit quicker, but it's not like it's so fast right now and it's so transformative like in 2025 that you're replacing several people on your already small consulting team, right? Like a project team might just be one manager and three like associates, consultants, aka like the analysts. Like I don't think AI is at this point where wow, we can just like half off two of them and just have one person run the show. Like it's not like that. And then looking ahead to the future, there might be more difference in the type of hires. Maybe if consulting firms are trying to expand more into AI build, they'll want to hire more data scientists and AI, ML programmers, everyone in that field, because their projects are just changing. So it's maybe not that the number of people will be dramatically reduced in the near term, but maybe some roles will be different. And I also want us to think about a lot of our clients, they hire consulting firms for some of these AI projects. And they'll continue to want to hire us for at least the next couple of years as they're setting things up. The type of projects is going to change. So maybe right now they're like, oh, how do we use AI? So now they tell us to come in and, oh, these are ways that AI can help you reduce costs. Maybe we build something. And maybe later on, they'll be more sophisticated with AI usage. So the projects will look different. So we'll see where the future takes us. I won't be able to predict it, but I can say that right now in 2025, I'm not seeing like, based on what I'm hearing from my consulting firms, oh, suddenly their teams just downsize from, like manager +3 to manager plus just one suddenly right now because AI is so amazing already internally.
Listen up. If you're struggling to land an amazing software engineering full-time job or internship, or if you submitted dozens of applications and you feel like nothing is working, or if you failed multiple online assessments and interviews, or you just feel like you don't understand the process to land a great offer in the market of today, I actually run a school for people like you called the Software Engineering Accelerator. Now, over the past year, we've helped dozens of people land incredible jobs at internships at companies like Google, Amazon, Microsoft, Tesla, Salesforce, Adobe, LinkedIn, Capital One, MongoDB, JP Morgan, and the list goes on. And the best part about our program is that we actually guarantee the outcome. If you don't get the full-time job or internship you want, you don't pay. So if you'd like to work directly with me and my team of FANG recruiters and engineers to land an incredible job in tech guaranteed, click the top link in the description and submit an application to join us. Yeah, so correct my understanding of consulting. Based on what I know about the field of consulting, maybe a common situation would be like there's a CEO and they have a board and they're like, we want to go into this new market, but I need to prove to the board that it actually makes sense. Right. So we're going to hire McKinsey to do like a whole market analysis of this area to kind of just get a bunch of data, go interview like dozens of experts, create a whole report so then I can present that to the board to show that I'm making a good decision. And in terms of the actual work there, maybe the CEO works with like a high-level partner at the consulting company, and then they kind of like outsource that to a bunch of entry-level consultants to actually go do the groundwork. They review all the information, package it up, and present it to the CEO, and then the CEO takes it from there. So based on that understanding of consulting, and again, correct me if I'm like mistaken about how that works, I feel like that entry-level stuff could potentially be done a lot with AI, at least part of it, right? Because let's say 10 years ago, like if you wanted to learn about some new random industry, there's literally no way you could do it other than marshaling a team of 10 to 15 incredibly smart people to go into the field, to fly over to whatever random city they're in, to like get a hotel and sit there for like a month interviewing all the experts, making reports and just learning about it as soon as possible and then coming back. But now when we have LLM models like, ChatGPT, OpenAI's models, Anthropic's models, right? They have access to basically like the corpus of all of human information, right? So in theory, they could just do all of that processing and legwork and then just present like maybe like a 75, 80% finished report. And then the mid-level or senior could just take that and kind of like clean that up a bit, right? So from that like understanding, maybe if not today, AI is kind of like taking over these entry-level roles in consulting, but it might happen in the next 5 to 10 years. So I guess what's your opinion on everything I just said there?
Yes, I do think in the next 5 to 10 years, AI will have a fairly big impact. Current day, that change has not happened yet. However, in 5 to 10 years, what you're saying, I mean, even some projects right now, if it's just looking into the market scan and these data sources that could be developed with AI, is going to be a lot faster. What's currently still like harder to disrupt with AI is all the things requiring a lot of workshops, actual in-person meetings, stakeholder management, running the project and managing all the people. Because for some of these really big projects that are not just looking into the market, the growth, the like competitive details, like not just the research part, the actual coming up with initiatives and actually implementing and executing that stuff is still very hard to replace. But on that, what you said, the research and everything, yeah, I think so. I think there's a lot of opportunity to disrupt. It's like before when people used to have to write PowerPoint by hand, they had to actually just manually write and draw the pages. But now you don't need to do that, so you can produce way more PowerPoint pages with just one person.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I think in the future, I can see that too. That's also why I mentioned a bit about the type of work might be changing, right? So if you don't really need that many consultants to do that kind of market report research stuff, maybe consulting firms, and as they already have been, starting to look into actually just pivoting towards AI builds and more that digitization work. Because they know that you don't need to hire and pay millions for that market research stuff.
For sure. Have you played around with ChatGPT's deep research at any point?
Oh, I tried it once. Yeah. Yeah, that was pretty good. Yeah.
Like you can just make a prompt and then it spends maybe 30 minutes to actually like build out the whole response.
Yeah.
But the level of rigor that that deep research has would probably take like 2 weeks for a team to actually produce like that good of a report. So I'm on the same page with you where like it's doing great things now, but on the flip side, it makes a lot of mistakes. Like if you're making billion-dollar decisions off of a ChatGPT generated report, you probably want a team to actually go and fact check everything and actually parse through the AI slop to make sure it's not just hallucinating entire markets and all that stuff like that. So I think it's nuanced, right? Like maybe we'll see a future where consultants are just using a suite of AI tools, right? Rather than them being quote unquote entirely replaced by AI.
Exactly. And because they can use the AI tools, projects will be faster. And so the cost and how much you're going to charge the clients for these, again, the stuff that requires like the market research and stuff that could be enabled by AI, the cost you charge to clients might decrease because you could just do it a lot faster. But there are still going to be some projects that will still cost a lot, like the stuff that requires just like a lot more time and human involvement, or like new builds. Yeah.
So what's the day in the life of a consultant? Like, what is it actually like being a consultant? And what's some things about consulting life that outsiders would almost never believe is real?
In terms of a day of a life, I'll start so I was actually a project leader by the time I left, so my day looked a little bit different versus if you were someone who's just starting off into the industry. So I'll actually describe what your day would look like as someone who is just starting off, like you're like an analyst, like an associate. You probably would be waking up around 7 a.m. or so, getting ready, getting to the office. 9 a.m. you'll have your first team stand up, and it's a team huddle where you talk about priorities for the day. You will be working on various things, and your day will look different depending on what your project is, what you're working on, since you'll have different work streams. Let's say you're on a project that requires travel, and then you might actually spend your morning traveling and flying to a client site bright and early Monday morning. If not, you're staying local. Okay, you go to the office. Anyway, so after this 9 a.m. stand up, you probably will spend a couple of hours doing some of your work, whether that's Excel analysis, Excel analysis and other data platforms. We use something called Alteryx as well. You might spend a couple hours making slides on PowerPoint. You'll be sending emails, being in meetings. And your meetings could look like client meetings, so client workshops, presenting to the client, like in client readouts. It could be more internal meetings to discuss the project, showcase what your work is, discuss with seniors, ask them for input and suggestions. And guidance on the direction. You could also be calling external experts, so doing a lot of these expert calls to say, "Oh, hey, what is your thought on this industry? What have your experiences been? What are some perspectives on X, Y, Z that we're looking into?" Then you do that for the bulk of the day. You have a little small lunch break. Usually you don't get to have that long of time off for lunch. Then towards the end of the evening, at like let's say 5:30, you'll have a checkout meeting. And that's when you talk about the priorities for the rest of the day, because the day doesn't end there. The rest of the day is, the work that you need to do for the rest of the evening. So after that checkout meeting, maybe you'll spend another hour or two at the office to do some more work, get anything urgent out. You go home, you relocate, you have a bit of a dinner, a bit of a break. And sometimes people will want to work up until, say, like 9 p.m. Then they just log off entirely at that point. Then they have their dinner. For me, I've always liked to just have a break, do dinner, and jump back online. And when I do that, then maybe I take, say, like from 7 to 9 p.m. off to get back home, maybe like dinner, maybe quick gym, maybe quick shower, and then hop back online until I go to bed, which is maybe around like 12 a.m.
Whoa. Okay, so you're describing a 9 to 12 workday or 8 to 12 workday for the most part.
Yeah, I would say like technically, I guess, yeah, maybe you start a day at like 8:45 or so, depending again. And then you can take like a two-hour break, and then you work till maybe like 11:30.
Yeah, so that seems kind of insane, right? Like tell me tell me about like the stress of being a consultant.
So, the thing is, yes, the hours are long. I would say Monday to Wednesday, we try to front load a lot of the work into the early week or earlier parts of the week. So we feel like we're getting ahead. And overall in the week, I would say the hours range from around 55 to 65. Many consultants are actually working also into this 65 to 70 hour per week range. It's not abnormal. But I think what's more stressful is not the number of hours worked. I think it's actually the intensity per hour. Because the way I was describing a day, it was like, oh, yeah, you do some analysis, yes, you do some PowerPoint, emailing, meetings, but actually the day-to-day is really intense. Like per hour, you might have multiple things you need to get out. There's like some kind of fire, something that needs to be fixed, a new meeting you're pulled in. So let's say at like 12 p.m., you just grab lunch or having a bit of lunch, you get a text saying, hey, there's this meeting at 12:30, like you need to join it. You're like, okay, I need to join that meeting, but before that, I need to send something out for my partner to review because they need to review it by, say, 1 p.m. since they only have 30 minutes of free time. So you're just scrambling to try to finish that thing before you have to jump into a 12:30 meeting. You jump into a 12:30 meeting. You get all these questions and emails that you have to answer ASAP from the client while you're in this meeting. Then after the meeting, you're like, oh no, now I have to prep for my next meeting that's coming up at 2, which they want to see these numbers, and I haven't even collected enough data yet. And I need to go get this data, and I'm scrambling and sprinting between the 1 p.m. to 2 p.m. and like your day just looks like that. Like even as I'm describing it, I'm not sure if I'm emphasizing the like crazy fragmentation enough, but that's actually very realistic of what could be happening.
Yeah, I want to make this real for people. Tell me about hourly deadlines.
Yeah, so the hourly deadlines are driven by a couple of things. So one is, oh, you need to finish this thing ahead of meetings. because whether it's like team meetings or client meetings, they need to see it, right? And sometimes, like let's say in the morning, you have this check-in with your senior, and they say, "Hey, we need to update these things. Great, can you update them?" And maybe you have that meeting at 11 a.m. They're like, "Hey, can you update them? And can we regroup at 4 p.m. to talk about it?" So okay, cool. So now you have to finish this whole thing from 11 to 4, right? That's that kind of the meeting times that dictate the deadlines. And then also, if you're not actually doing the meetings, then it's like, oh, we need to send this to the client or send this to the senior by this time because they want to see it ASAP. So the ASAP means really like ASAP, same day to the extent possible. And usually we try to push for same day output and same day updates. You don't really make them wait. Multiple days of a deadline is not really a thing unless it's a big readout. Like, oh, of course you have like multiple days or like a week to get all this whole entire section finished. But it's the small pieces of analysis and outputs within those sections. A lot of the time, it's like you need to finish a lot of this stuff the same day. That's why they're hourly deadlines.
Yeah. Talk to me about the number of emails and Slack messages you get on a regular basis when you're a consultant, and the I guess the overall stress that has on someone over a long period of time.
Yeah, very stressful. It depends on, again, like the project and your level. So if you're on a project that requires a ton of stakeholder coordination, like I was on a project and it involved like we were setting up a ton of workshops and facilitating these for hundreds of our clients. So just imagine that's like hundreds of contacts and all the meetings and scheduling and the sessions. Plus, it's not just the scheduling, of course, you're actually delivering content and you need to talk about what content needs to be delivered and the analysis and everything. So on a project like that, from the moment I wake up until the moment I'm sleeping, like I'm deep in email and Slack and text and calls and like everything. Like thousands of messages a day.
Thousands of messages a day.
Yeah, across Slack, email, texts. Yeah.
Whoa. So how does it feel? Like you feel like a chicken running with your head cut off? Like what is that experience like on a daily basis?
Yeah, it feels like the moment I wake up, I'm like nonstop, like literally nonstop absorbing information and typing nonstop up until I go to bed. So your head is like spinning. Like I feel like my head's spinning. You're like on, and when you're in that zone, I feel like you're just kind of like sprinting, or it's like fight or flight mode. So you're just doing it. But it's definitely very stressful and very tiring.
So you were managing a team at 25.
Yes.
So that's a level that most people don't reach till their mid-30s. So tell me the story of how that even happened.
Yeah. So I'll explain a little bit about, the tenure and how that works. So I was a project leader at BCG. I was promoted officially into the role. I was just 25. So I was like a baby manager, like I was like, wow, like I'm so young. This is pretty cool. I was already like working the job for almost 4 years at that point. So it's not so new to me. But I was like, wow, like I'm very young. And the reason why that happened is because one is I got 2 early promotions. Like I got early, super, super early promos, like earliest windows possible. I have a late birthday, like my birthday's end of November, but I got promoted into that role like in like September officially. Would have actually been a bit earlier too, but I took some time off. Like it's like a formal it's a formal thing at work where you can take a month or 2 break. So I did that. And the reason why I'm like 25 and doing that too is I didn't do my MBA. So I just went straight through, got the promotions, had my late birthday. But someone who went to do their MBA, maybe, let's say the average age going into MBA is 28. You do 2 years of MBA, you graduate at 30. You start off as a consultant, which is one level below the project leader role. If things go well, you get promoted to project leader at age 32. So then you're 32 by the time you're a project leader. You could be older or younger too, right? It depends on a lot of factors. But if you are in like the path of started at BCG from undergrad, went straight through, did not take time off for school, got early promotions, then you are managing teams at 25 to 27 years old.
So Kelly, you've done hundreds of coffee chats.
Yeah.
So what the hell is a coffee chat? What's the point of a coffee chat? And how can someone stand out in one in the context of software engineering and tech?
Right. Coffee chats. I used to be very nervous when it came to coffee chats. Like my stomach would be, I would feel like nauseous, butterflies. I was so awkward. I hated them. And then slowly I grew to, actually, I really like them now. Coffee chats, many, it's like multifunctional. So many people do it in every single industry. And it could be just, hey, catching up with a friend. It could be just, getting to know your senior and the work that they do to see if there's an opportunity for you to work with them more, deepen the relationship. You could be talking to someone who's working a job you want or might be interested in to learn more. You could be reaching out to someone who's the hiring manager to directly say, hey, I'm interested in this job and here's who I am. Are you interested in interviewing me? Like not that explicitly, but that's your intent, right? So I think the intent of coffee chats, I only listed a few examples just now, but it can be very broad and it's very helpful in every single industry. It doesn't matter if you're in tech or consulting. Do you want to build a relationship with someone, have a good one-on-one conversation to get to know someone? Because that's when you get form bonds, right? Like we never met one-on-one to talk to each other. I would know so little about you too, and vice versa, right? And now that we've done that, now I feel like, oh wow, like I feel several degrees closer, and that's really important for social life, business, everything that you do. So that's a little bit about the coffee chats and the importance. And then you also wanted to talk about what makes someone stand out.
Yeah, before we go into the actual tactics and tools,
Yeah.
I want to define it, I guess a little bit more strictly, because the word coffee chat, I think, is incredibly understood in the field of finance and consulting because they're almost like a badge of, it's like a thing you have to do, right? For software engineers, it's like LeetCode, the number of coding problems you solve. For consultants, it's like certain coffee chats, right? Is a necessary thing you have to do to get ahead in that field. So for someone who's kind of uninitiated, and I guess if I'm incorrect about my definition, you can correct me, right? A coffee chat is maybe like a 30, 40-minute conversation with someone in a company you want to work at or a peer in the field, with the goal of getting to know the person and I guess just learning more about the role or the company or the position. And then potentially you can secure a referral or just get like industry insights about the field. Is there anything else that I didn't add there that would have been a better definition?
I think that's a great definition. I think, again, the goal of the coffee chats can really vary. Sometimes it's not even about the job. It's just, I just want to get to know this person a little bit more. I think they're cool. I want to ask them for some specific advice, right? But it's like typically around that 20 to 40-minute mark, get to know someone. Important to follow up too, right? Just have the coffee chat, but follow up with them afterwards, not just let it sink after the one conversation and never talk to them again, ideally.
In the context of tech, how can one even schedule coffee chats and who should people be going for coffee chats with?
Again, I think it depends on what your goal is, right? I can imagine the world of tech, if you are, so let's say you're trying to break into tech, you want to talk to people who are currently working or have worked in the roles you're interested in. I think a great way to do this is to go on LinkedIn and filter. Let's say you're like, hey, I'm working in a non-tech role and I want to go into tech. Let's say you're, I'm working in marketing. I'm interested in product marketing, or I'm not a software engineer. I want to be a software engineer. And I see people who made the same jumps. You can filter and say, oh, this person used to work in this industry and now they're currently in this role, or this person is an alumni from my school and now they're currently in the role that I want. So do a filter, find out profiles, and then you can send them a message and reach out. And I think that's a great way for you to connect with people. And then within a tech organization, let's say you're already in tech and you want to learn more about switching teams or maybe expanding your scope of work, then I think in internal directory and just asking people around the firm, hey, do you know someone who would be good for me to talk to? Oh, hey, I see this person's name is on this email list and they're talking about this work that I'm really excited about. Then you can shoot them a note to say, hey, I am interested in XYZ. I saw that you were leading it, or I saw that you were involved. Would you be open to connecting with me so I can ask you more questions? Things like that.
So what's a good frequency of coffee chats? Like how many coffee chats should one be doing on a weekly basis?
Oh, people have different perspectives on this. Some people are like, you know what, I make it it's one of my KPIs or OKRs, however you want to define it, to have at least one coffee chat a week or two a week where I reach out to someone, reconnect with them. They're like very structured networkers. I was never like that. So I think it depends on your personality. And again, like what do you want out of it, and what do you define as like a coffee chat or a catch up? Every single week, I connect with a lot of people, right? Like on my socials, casual chats, casual texts, occasional coffee connects for sure. So for me, I don't necessarily feel the need to have like formal coffee chats and a certain number to hit each week. It's like even a message or like a reply to someone on social media or even commenting on their LinkedIn post. For me, those are all really great ways to keep in consistent touch with your network without needing to do like a 30-minute call. And if you are someone who is recruiting for a job, you probably want to have multiple coffee chats every single week because you need to be recruiting, you need to be speaking with the firms and the hiring teams, right? If you're already working your current role and you're happy in it, but maybe you're just like kind of curious to see what's out there, maybe you like do a couple here and there, right? If the opportunity comes along. I think it just depends.
Yeah, I feel like most people, especially who are listening to this podcast, are computer science students, software engineers, and are looking for a new job or an internship. And based on that audience, from what I've seen from the students I work with, they are completely underutilizing coffee chats. Most people have probably only maybe been on a handful, if even that. So I feel like honestly, just increasing that as much as possible to maybe even like 1 to 2 a week would be really, really good for them.
Oh yeah.
Even just setting a goal, right? Because LeetCode is, the website that software engineers use to practice for the coding interviews, right? But very few of them have like a KPI or a metric for the number of coffee chats they actually want to engage in. So I would recommend, and you can provide your input on this as well, I would say like 1 to 2 per week would be, at a minimum, would be super helpful for someone who's in tech.
Yeah, I would say at very minimum, if you are in tech and you're actively looking for a role, the power of reaching out is so critical because think about it. If the company, let's say I'm a hiring manager and I have this job posting. Yes, in tech, I understand there are many of these skills and these tests that you have to pass, right? So yes, that's really important. But a candidate who DMs me or emails me and says, "Hey, I saw your job posting. I'm really interested. Maybe like here's a link to my portfolio, or like, oh, here's my resume. Here's a little bit about me and my experiences and why I'd be a good fit. If you have time to connect with me, I'd love to even chat with you about the role before the interviews even happen." And they might say no, but you can ask that. You can offer these details about yourself and just show that you've done your research about the company. You're really excited, and if you do that, like you are very much like a way more on top of my radar and way more likely for me to give you an interview in the first place. And you already have like gained some brownie points by doing that as well. In the sea of applicants, you want to be able to stand out, and you want to connect with them as people. I've even heard some people, they're like, if you want to really push above and beyond, you can even include like a video self-introduction, like a link to a video self-intro, where you're reaching out to these hiring managers because now the job market being a little bit slower, you want to just be very front and center, go really above and beyond, right?
What are some tactics and tips people can use to maximize their coffee chats they do have?
So before you go into coffee chat, think about what does success look like for this chat? What do you want out of it? And it doesn't need to feel so like, oh, this is so transactional, this and that. I mean, you're talking to this person to, it could even be something like, oh, I want to get to know them better, or I want to see how I can help them. It doesn't need to be like a selfish, oh, what does success look like, right? It can be very two-sided. So one thing about what are my goals? What does success look like when I walk out of this? What do I want? Then I would say, second, uh, do a lot of research into the relevant areas. So that person's background, that person's company, their industry. If you say that you are interested in this industry, or their specific role, at least do the groundwork to learn about what the basics of that role is. Now with ChatGPT, it's so easy. If you're like, oh, I'm really interested in becoming a software engineer at this company. Oh, what is this company like? Tell me about their entire product line, right? Like, what are they launching? What is their strategy right now? Who are their customers? Just get that TLDR. So at least you're going in much more informed. So do the research, prepare some of these questions beforehand. And then during the chat, to maximize it too, people always say, "Oh, it's so transactional." Again, like it doesn't need to be because you can also bring a lot of value to the person you're speaking with by things like, using the research that you've done in step 2 to form really good questions, thoughtful questions. Asking really good follow-on questions that make them reflect, like, "Oh, hey, so can you tell me more about that? Why did you do that? Interesting. Were you always like that?" Right? You can make some comments too. "Oh, wow, like that sounds very interesting. Like a way that I relate is XYZ." Then share some things about you that's very genuine. You don't need to go and say, "Oh, nice to meet you. Like I'm just really interested in learning more." You can be a bit more honest too, to say maybe, "Well, hey, I'm genuinely stuck between these two career paths. I love both of them, and so I wanted to learn more from your side, so to help me inform my decision on which path to really pursue." Right? Like, these are all really valid points, and people can connect with you more if they feel like you're being honest, if you're being positive, thoughtful, you've been diligent, and so on.
People love to feel like they're an expert. So what I found is super useful is almost interviewing them, asking about their career path, their trajectory, their journey. And usually, especially in tech, right? Maybe in consulting and finance is a bit different, but in tech, people are so rarely just given the time of day to actually learn more about them. So often if you actually interview them, talk about their background, their history, and kind of like almost talk to them as if you're looking up to them as a mentor and a guide, people feel like ingratiated to you. They're like, oh, wow, this person's actually listening to me, is actually interested, is motivated, and is going to take my advice and actually apply it. I want to help this person. Yeah. So you can start by asking about their background, experience, history, and then you can ask them a very targeted question about the company they work at, right? How do they feel about X, Y, and Z topic? And then, in fact, at the end, what we usually tell our students to do is they can often ask for a referral, or if you can connect them with the hiring manager or recruiter. And in tech, and this is probably the same in other fields as well, these software engineers get a bonus if the person is hired. So they're usually very willing to actually submit a referral for them.
Yes, I love that point about the referral. People are a bit shy to ask sometimes, but actually, many companies pay people when the referral is successful. So there's actually motivation for them to do that. And the point about mentorship, I also really love that. I think that another thing that you can do is after you talk to them, if you ask them for advice during your call, it's great to follow up with them and say, "Hey, I love their advice about this and that." Maybe like it's advice about, "Oh, this is how I should tailor my application," or, "Oh, this is how I can stand out in terms of job performance." You say that you've kept these points in mind, you recap it in writing in this email, and then later if you implement it and you follow up with them afterwards and say, "Look, I implemented the advice that you gave me and it had great results," that person will feel awesome. It's like you said, it makes them want to coach you and mentor you more because they feel like if you're planting a seed and watering it, they feel like they're watering something that's blossoming and blooming, and like people love that, right? Yeah.
So tell me more about networking in general. Like, what is the point of networking? What are just facets of networking? And how can someone who hates small talk get good at networking?
I personally hated small talk. I still don't know how I feel about it, but I feel like now you've done the reps and a lot of the time you're used to it. I'm an extrovert, so I think that also helps. But I can also imagine, like for me, sometimes it's very draining still to talk to a ton of new people. So if you're someone who's a bit more introverted, I can really imagine how the small talk and networking can be super exhausting. Can we make it a little bit less exhausting, right? So I think that think about what works best for you. You don't need to use the same networking strategies that everyone else does to achieve good results. People might think, oh, you need to have like all these coffee chats lined up. You need to go to like a networking event and be the most social person there and talk to all these people, right? I don't think you need to. I think that if you don't love a lot of small talk in these in-person events, maybe try to optimize for having 1 to 3 solid, deeper chats with one person at a time. So you get to ask them a few more questions and just get to know this one person really well, instead of doing light surface talk with 20 people, and that's okay. And if you feel like the in-person events are overwhelming or exhausting, reach out to people on LinkedIn or via email and just reach out to them in a targeted way to see if they'll respond, and then set up a one-on-one call with them. And I feel like that is typically less exhausting because it's not small talk when it comes to these calls. Once you have the one-on-one time, you can ask really thoughtful questions and their time is centered towards you. No one is like fidgeting, trying to go away to talk to the next group of people. And that makes it a bit easier from my perspective.
So how can someone ask questions that make them sound smart even when they're lost? What's the secret and mindset behind that?
Okay. So I think that when it comes to, okay, so I'll segment it into two different categories, right? So one is when it comes to networking, how to ask smart questions. Doing the research is so important. Think about like, what are some questions that will make them think a bit more? And they're not just like generic, oh, I'm going to regurgitate my resume and LinkedIn. You can ask some, of course, like, oh, why did you switch from this role to that role? But just keep in mind that they probably have heard that question many times. If you do a little bit more deep research, you can ask thoughtful, reflective questions like, oh, so when you switch from this role to that role, were there things that you felt like you were taking a risk on? What made you decide to take that risk, and how big was the risk to you from your perspective? So you can see how like just by adding that little edge, you're not asking them just a boring question of, oh, why did you switch? But it's like, oh, like, how did that really make you feel, right? Like, what's really going on there? Then you can ask a couple of really strong follow-on questions again. And when it comes to asking questions or talking about industries that you're not familiar with, right? Let's say they are working in the travel tourism industry and you don't really know what's going on. Read some expert opinion articles. So you can just go on Google and search up, hey, like, what are experts saying about the upcoming innovations in travel and tourism? What's happening for the future of this industry? What's driving like some tailwinds or headwinds, like as in like what's making the industry like grow, or like what's slapping it in the face? And just read a bit of these opinions. You'll come much more equipped. You can even use some of their thoughts and bring that into your conversation. Like, oh, I read that this and that was happening in this industry. You didn't come up with it. You just read like an expert opinion on it, but it'll make you sound really smart. So that's in the context of networking, right? In terms of questions, when it comes to just general, like as you're having a conversation about something, I would say like you can ask questions, but try to propose some initial options. Like, hey, like, what do you think like the next step should be? Should it be like X or Y? Instead of just leaving the question as is, bring in, hey, is it X or Y to choose from? You can also tell them straight up that I'm not as familiar with this industry, but here's what I do know. And based on that, like, this is the question that I have.
Really quick, guys. I've personally worked with hundreds of computer science students and software engineers to help them land incredible, high-paying jobs in tech over the past few years. And from that experience, I put together a resource breaking down the top 5 lessons I learned throughout that process. We'll go through the biggest mistakes people make when trying to land a job or internship in tech, and everything you need to kickstart your software engineering career. It's available completely for free at amonmanazar.com/7dayengineer, or check the link in the description. You've interviewed over 200 candidates. What separates the people who get offers from the ones who don't?
I'll make this a bit more broad towards everyone, not just consulting. I think that what differentiates people, the ability to really go above and beyond what everyone else is doing. So it sounds simple, but I think the mindset to have is if you're answering something, if you're delivering something, what will like many people say? Is my answer similar to what they'll say, or is my answer going to be better? Like, how can I make my answer stand out? Because a lot of the time, right, like just being good enough isn't actually good enough to get you hired, unfortunately, in this competitive pool. And some examples could be like, have you, again, like just like, yes, preparation and everything. But let's say it's a question about, well, leadership. Tell me about leadership. You can talk about, oh, yes, I was a leader, XYZ. I had this formal role. But if you want to really stand out, you can talk about that, then add on something like, well, I think that leadership is important even if you are not in a position of a leader. And here's how I was able to influence and lead when I was not even a leader. And I was able to lead my seniors and I was able to lead other people even though I didn't even have direct title influence. And that's kind of cool. That's like a cool example. You can also just think about ways to be very specific and show real feelings and details. A lot of people tend to be a bit too generic. Like, oh, we had a team conflict. People disagreed on ideas. So I went and asked everyone for what they liked and didn't like about the idea. And I compiled it. Then we held a meeting and then everyone agreed. Like, I think an answer like that is way too generic, right? And it feels a bit made up. So try to avoid those and think about, well, what are people actually feeling? What were some things that were said? What's actually happening in reality that's realistic? And bring those elements in.
What do you think about STAR? Do you think it's a good answer format, or is there something better people can use?
I think STAR is fine. I think that people tend to make the mistake of spending way too much time on situation and task and not enough on action. And action is actually like where you're going to get the most brownie points. Like that's like how you're going to stand out, right? Anyone can summarize, oh, this is what happened, but only you can talk about what actions you took. I would actually like to add the word thoughts to that. It's not just the actions, but what were you thinking? And let's also add in what were you saying and what were they saying? So it's like, let's talk about in this situation, what did you do and why? What were you thinking? What was your rationale? What were the other people thinking and feeling? Can you show that you have the EQ to understand another person's POV? And what did you even say? Like, what phrases did you exchange? These are all really great additions to the STAR format. And you don't need to follow STAR every single time. I think there are some of these like situational questions or scenario-based questions. And maybe then you go into like a hypothesis like, oh, in this scenario, I would do X, Y, Z because da-da-da, here's my rationale. So I think it depends, but I don't have an issue with STAR. I think that people just need to focus a lot more on the actions, then add in thoughts and words that were said.
So for the students we teach, we actually add on the STAR. We add an I and a P after the R. So for someone who hasn't heard about STAR, it's situation, task, action, result. But we add impact and philosophy. So most people, they end up just fizzling out at the end. But what we always teach is like, okay, can you think about impact? Like what's one step beyond just a result? So a classic example is, let's say you're a college student and you tutored a bunch of high schoolers in computer science, okay? The result might be, yeah, these kids learned Python better. Okay, fine. But what's the impact of that? If you say something like, yeah, and 3 of them actually chose to study computer science in their university degrees because of the direct impact that we had in their courses, right? Immediately, the interviewer is going to be like, wow, this person actually knows how to think long-term, understands the long-term impact, because companies are looking for people who can build for the long-term, right? Not just for tomorrow, not for the short-term. And then finally, the philosophy is, what did you learn from that situation? And if you can tie it back to a company value. So for example, one of Meta's values is move fast, right? So if I can tie back the result and the philosophy from this story to be like, the biggest thing I took away from this is that it's really important to move fast in certain situations like this, and show that you really understand that value through and through. It really shows the interviewer that you can be a good fit for the culture at that company.
Okay, I love that. Yes. Love long-term impact. I love your learnings and takeaways. So something that I also suggest too, it depends on the answer and like how much time you still have. Yes, always tie it back to the role. Say say learnings. I like to talk about the concepts too, right? Like let's say the questions around motivation, like how you're motivating a team. I like to suggest to people, if you have the time, talk about what is motivation? Like what are the key success drivers of motivation and how do you do that? Beyond just your example, but just like what does that concept mean? And how do you make it successful broadly?
What are some hacks that consultants use to communicate ideas clearly and confidently that software engineers can learn?
I love frameworks as a consultant, of course. We're all about the frameworks and the structure. I think that let's divide this into two categories. One category is if you are stuck and you're not really sure what to say, you're a little bit like unsure about the answer, you're called out maybe. Here's what you can do. So the first thing is you can say, hey, I don't have all the answers yet, but here's what I'll do as a next step to look into this. And then this is when I will get back to you with a more refined answer. So that's a great way to answer something when you're not really sure what they're asking or like you don't have the answer yet. Or another way to do that is, hey, that's an excellent question. We have looked into XYZ. We haven't looked into that. Here is someone else who might be able to answer that a little bit better. So these are some examples of ways that you can overcome like uncertainty when caught on the spot. But for general communication frameworks, a couple that might be useful is to, like the essay style, like you have the essay, like the key takeaway, and then you have the supporting arguments. That's a really solid one. It's like, hey, here's the headline, and we think this because of rationale 1, 2, 3. It's so easy, put into practice that way you're not blabbing or rambling on into random areas. I love that essay structure. Some other really good structures would be the zoom out, zoom in, and zoom forward structure. So what that one is let's say someone asks you, what is the progress update on the project? You say, well, let's zoom out. So big picture, we've looked into data across 7 markets so far. So zoom out, right? That's the big picture. We've looked into all this market data. We're 30% done with the strategy report. Now we zoom in. We say, okay, so within this data, these are some of the details and challenges that we're trying to solve. So you're getting a little bit more micro granular. And then you zoom forward, you say, okay, so as a next step, we're going to do X, Y, Z. So it's kind of like big picture, what are our goals, right? The goals that we're trying to achieve is X, Y, Z. Zoom in, this is what we're doing to achieve those goals. And then zoom forward, these are some of the next steps. So that's one. Another good framework would be data, interpretation, and recommendation. And this might be helpful in the tech world because you're always working with data too. For this one, maybe the question is, well, what do you think about our upcoming decision for expansion, right? Then you say, well, the data shows that 70% of customers are in favor of our new product flavor. That's the data. Or the 70% of our customers are in favor of like the specific mango, strawberry flavors. Okay. Then the interpretation is, this means that we might want to expand our product lines to also include these flavors and remove some of the flavors that are less popular. And maybe we'd want to even have variations of different types of mango and strawberry, and maybe even add them onto different other product lines because it's in such high demand. And so then the recommendation is, well, I think that because of that, the next 3 steps would be to first look into which product lines we might be able to add the mango and strawberry flavors on as an immediate next step. 2, run test groups to see how they'll react to the new flavors before we launch it. 3, so on and so on. So these frameworks, I think, are very helpful for clear communication.
What do you think about quiet quitting?
Quiet quitting. I think that I think that it's a bit misleading. I think that quiet quitting and this whole revolution, like mini revolution, or at least what I've seen on some socials, can be a bit misleading because it almost feels like if you're someone who is not happy in your job and you're just like reading some of this material, it almost feels like, hey, you should just like get by with the bare minimum and just not work and whatnot. I feel like if you are very unhappy with your job, you still should perform and get your responsibilities complete, right? Like you are hired by the company, like you still owe it to your team to at least complete your fair share of the work. And if you don't want to go above and beyond because you're using the time to do something more productive, okay, maybe what you do is you do the bare minimum required at your job because you're using the extra time to look for another job, or you're training up a new skill set or something else. And you're doing that not as a permanent solution, but just like that's a temporary bridge because you need to have that time to exit out and recruit and do what's best for you. Okay, cool. But I think the notion of, well, I'm going to just cruise by and not put in that much effort, and I'm just going to doom scroll on Instagram all day and not think about what else I'm going to do outside of this job that I don't like. I don't like enough to put in any work in. I think that's not the right path for your future, right? Like you're kind of just like wasting away your hours that way.
Yeah, I feel like quiet quitting was a big trend, I think, last year. And I feel like the flip side is happening now with the quote unquote great lock in. I don't know if you've seen that online. Yeah, the term the great lock in is blowing up everywhere. You should probably make some Instagram reels about
Wait,
that.
that's really funny. What do you think made the change for to it? Because that's a big change. It's like all of a sudden you're like quiet quit, now you're like lock in, lock
Yeah.
in.
I just feel
Wait,
like
that's
this
funny.
is any trend, right? Like you have trend, counter trend, trend, counter trend, right? And I feel like last year it was the whole phenomenon of quiet quitting. It was also like Gen Z hitting the workforce, which I want to ask you about as well. Like people were really checking out. They're like, I'm not satisfied. I don't like this job. I don't care about this company. I don't care about the customers, the product, the vision whatsoever. I'm just going to coast. I'm going to work 2 hours a day. I'm just going to not get fired and just coast and just not even worry about it. And then the complete other take is happening now where kind of like today's version of the winter arc is the great lock-in. So if you search the great lock-in on YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, LinkedIn, it's like all these people talking about how to like execute a lock-in this year. So I think it's kind of interesting. And I feel like on the point which you mentioned with quiet quitting, I think it's kind of like lost the plot where you can quiet quit, but that doesn't actually mean your life is fulfilling, right? Just because you have a lot of free time doesn't mean that time is not the goal. It's doing things you care about, right? And people who are quiet quitting, they're not taking a step back and filling it with all this fulfilling stuff. They're just doom scrolling and doing nothing for the most part. So I feel like the quote unquote quiet quitting is worthwhile if you're actually applying it towards something you want to do long term, not just doing nothing and scrolling all day.
Exactly. And if that's the case, like I don't even think I would call it quiet quitting, right? Like I'm like, okay, that's like that is like you are just simply re-optimizing your time and trying to create space to pursue other interests and change what situation you're currently in, like, right? Like I don't know if that's like, oh, I'm going to coast and quiet quit. It's like, hey, like I just need to spend some more time to recruit and look into other opportunities out there instead of my current job because it's not fulfilling me. Like it's really it's a bit different. Yeah.
What do you think about Gen Z in the workforce from the perspective of someone who is a millennial?
Oh my gosh, I know. And so I'm 28, I'm turning 29 this year. I'm like at the cusp of Gen Z to millennial transition. And I can vibe, I think, with both millennials and Gen Zs. I personally had a good experience working with Gen Zs. I think BCG hires good candidates generally. I find them like I find them so funny. I loved having them on my teams because at that point, like I was young, like I was a young manager, and I understand the slang and the lingo. I find it funny, and I can talk to slang and lingo with them too, right? So it's like, oh, haha, slay, like right, like just like it's like I like it, breath of fresh air, good energy from my perspective. But I've also heard other managers complain about things like, oh, like they're so not professional. Oh, they're like trying to bring a hoodie to this like formal client readout. I'm like, you can't wear this hoodie. We're going to talk to executives. Like things like this happen. I don't know if I don't think it's like a Gen Z thing. I think it's just like young people generally in like any of these cohorts, you'll make these mistakes. It's not like I don't think a lot of these are just like Gen Z specific, but because it's like millennials are managing Gen Zs for the first time, then they're like, oh my God, it's the Gen Zs. But maybe people who are managing young millennials also had some things to say.
Yeah, I'm actually Gen Z. So what I've seen from the perspective of the different generations is that, and I wonder what your take is on this. Like people have said that millennials kind of grew up in the culture where everybody's kind of like the millennials parents and millennials as parents were like kind of just teaching their kids like you're a special snowflake, you can just do whatever you want, you're gonna grow up and do big things. And then that kind of like created a big impact. But Gen Z is almost like the opposite where I've heard that like millennials kind of like say a lot of things, but don't necessarily actually make the impact or the change. Whereas like people say that Gen Z actually goes out there and does stuff. So I don't know. Again, I don't have any opinions about this, but I want to hear what your take is on that.
That's interesting.
You feel like it's the opposite?
No, I actually haven't noticed this too much, right? Like I haven't paid so much attention myself into it. I do think that maybe like I'm just stereotyping here, Gen Z is more willing to be vocal and speak up about topics. And maybe that's because like they're much more like they grew up in like the era of like TikTok became a lot more prevalent, and on TikTok people voice way more opinions than when it was just the Instagram days. Before TikTok and it was like just Instagram, like it was like just pictures, right? And Instagram Reels didn't really become a big thing until like after TikTok already started becoming really popular with videos. So before that video age, aka the age where like Gen Z started like, becoming older and growing up, people can't really voice as many opinions just from pictures. Like you could do that with blogs, but it just wasn't as viral. And now with like these viral videos and the ability and the platforms to enable these opinions, I think that Gen Zs are more willing and comfortable with being vocal because that's just what they grew up with. Whereas like Gen Z grew up in like some workplaces that were a lot more traditional. Social media was not really a thing. Everything's a lot more old school, old fashioned. No platform to enable a lot of these opinions in this like somewhat safe space. Like yes, the internet, like you get like these people who comment like and debate and discuss, but it's like safe as in the sense like nothing is going to happen to you. Like you're like freedom of speech, right? Like you can say whatever you want on like TikTok in America anyway, like from what I'm seeing, like almost whatever you want. Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like one thing I've noticed is that millennials are a lot more concerned about the rules than Gen Z are. So I've spoken to a lot of millennials who have actually jobs in tech, and who have a platform, and they're way, way, way more concerned about what they're saying, how it's going to be interpreted, like the rules, the quote unquote rules, like that's against the rules. You can't do that. You have to worry about that, right? Whereas Gen Z, they kind of just don't give a shit about what they do. That's a big thing I've noticed. Another thing is, I think another big defining part of being a millennial versus Gen Z is that millennials only got social media when they were like an adult. So like most millennials were like 18. I don't know about you. Like when did you get Instagram? What age?
I know, yeah, I was like 16, 17.
Yeah, so you were
That was like the
basically
OG Instagram days without the video, right? Like without the video, like yeah.
So you were like entering adulthood. Whereas me, I got Instagram when I was 12. So usually Gen Zs, like they grew up, they went through their teenage years and like middle school years with social media being a big thing. Like I was watching YouTube when I was like 11, 12, right? And now Gen Alpha is like 3 years old on like scrolling TikToks. That's like a completely other thing.
They're going to be an interesting
Bunch.
yeah,
I wonder where
interesting
that's gonna
species.
be.
Yeah.
Yeah, nice. So for a 22-year-old software engineer listening right now, who's in their first year of work, they're burnt out, but they're ambitious and they want to find whether it's a corporate job or a job they actually like, what advice do you have for them?
Look, I would say lean into the power of networking and talking to people, right? I think that hearing different perspectives will really help you make things clear and give you insight and just different ways to think about things that you might not have known. I think that is very refreshing too, to speak to people who have interesting takes and interesting advice. But in the end, take what people say and summarize it, synthesize it. You don't have to believe anything like 100%. You don't have to take everything like 100% as is. That's the first thing. And if you are ambitious but already feeling burnt out and you're young, you're like 22 and recruiting and everything, your mental and physical health is still very important. If you are feeling good, you can perform better on your interviews, right? Take the breaks that you need whenever possible. Know that recruiting and when it comes to these like career paths and job switches, play for a long game. There are many ways to pivot into this or that or change things up in the future. It's really not the end of the world if, in current day, you feel a bit overwhelmed or like if one opportunity didn't go well, there will be opportunities out there, especially I think in a field like tech, especially if you are a software engineer, your skills are still very applicable across many different areas and companies, right? It's like still very versatile.
Kelly, where should people go if they want to connect with you further?
Yes. So Kelly Career Mode is my handle. So at Kelly Career Mode on Instagram and TikTok, and YouTube. Although I'm less active there, but building it out. So like basically contrary to your platforms. And on Instagram, fun fact, I run Sunday chats every single Sunday. So it's a great Q&A forum where I have my question box in my Instagram stories. You can ask me whatever questions you want. Nothing is off limits. So that's the best way to reach me and ask questions, because otherwise it's a bit difficult for me to parse through all the comments and like DMs and everything. So yeah, you can get in touch with me directly that way.
Nice. Kelly, thanks for doing this.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
That's today's episode of the Software Engineering Accelerator podcast. Thank you so much for watching. Now, if you want early access to every single one of these episodes, head over to Apple Podcasts or Spotify or any other podcast app and follow the Software Engineering Accelerator podcast. That's right, you can listen to every episode early on the podcast apps before they get released on YouTube, so make sure to go over and follow on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, and turn on notifications or check the links in the description. And finally, always remember, help will always be given to those who ask for it. So click the top link in the description if you want our help to accelerate your software engineering career and land your dream job or internship.